My name is Rachel, and currently, I reside in an annex of my in-laws' house with my husband, Stefan. While Stefan lives in the main house with his parents, I am the sole occupant of the annex. Originally, this annex was a small structure built by Stefan's grandfather as a personal project to create a private space. Over time, it has been converted into a living space approximately the size of a room, thanks to my efforts. Initially, Stefan and I lived in a regular apartment for about 3 years after our marriage. However, his parents, who greatly adore him, suddenly expressed their desire to live with Stefan. In response, Stefan, as the dutiful son, declared that he also wanted to be with his parents. Witnessing their emotional reaction, including tears and embraces, I found myself taken aback by the heartfelt scene. Stefan and I first crossed paths at work, where he was my direct subordinate when he joined the company midway through his career. We became a couple after 3 years of dating. Throughout that dating period, he resided at his parents' house. It appears that this prolonged stay fostered a sense of homesickness in both Stefan and his parents. Stefan, who had been pampered at home, seemed to have never been involved in any household chores. After our marriage, when I suggested sharing housework, he appeared reluctant, stating that he had never done any housework before. The problematic aspect was that, despite my intention to divide the chores between us, Stefan seemed to have never considered participating in household tasks himself. I sensed a pattern in all of this. Whenever I attempted to involve him in household chores, Stefan would feign interest for a brief moment, grow disinterested, and eventually say, "This isn't for me. You're better at this, Rachel. You should keep doing it." Both of us were employed, and given my higher position at work, I felt a greater need to share the household responsibilities. However, encouraging him to help often proved to be more time-consuming than handling everything myself. It reached a point where I found it less troublesome to manage everything alone. The dynamics shifted when I transitioned to remote work. Stefan, seemingly surprised to find me at home every day, initially understood the change. He stopped complaining about my altered lifestyle, or so I thought. It became apparent later that he hadn't fully grasped the implications of my decision. Several years into my remote work, Stefan's parents suddenly visited our apartment, expressing a desire to live with him. Witnessing their emotional reunion, I felt a sense of isolation and bewilderment. Eventually, with Stefan's wish to be with his parents, we made the decision to move into their house. Stefan consistently chose locations close to his parents, whether it was for renting an apartment or selecting a job. For me, remote work made the location irrelevant, but his choices required us to uproot ourselves and quit our jobs. Upon settling into his parents' house, Stefan's mother expressed gratitude, saying, "Thank you for taking care of Stefan all this time. From now on, I will take good care of Stefan. Rachel, please take care of everything else." Initially, I interpreted this as a relief from doing housework for Stefan, but soon I realized her intentions were different. My mother-in-law's tasks involved preparing special meals exclusively for Stefan, meticulously laundering only his clothes, ensuring his shoes and belongings stayed immaculate, and purchasing various items specifically for him. As for all other household chores, those for Stefan's parents and myself, including cooking and laundry, were now solely delegated to me despite my ongoing commitment to work. Now, I found myself burdened with the responsibility of not only managing household chores for Stefan's parents and myself, but also maintaining the cleanliness of the larger family house. The prospect left me disheartened. Despite my efforts, this cohabitation seemed to bring happiness only to Stefan and his parents, with no apparent benefits for me. In fact, it felt like my burdens had increased. During one cleaning session, my father-in-law approached me with a request. He looked apologetic as he explained, "Rachel, I have a favor to ask. Could you contribute some money?" Confused, I inquired further. He elaborated, expressing his difficulty in asking Stefan to contribute to household expenses for both of us. Apparently, Stefan had worked hard, and it felt challenging to request financial contributions from him. Stefan and I had previously agreed to share expenses like apartment rent and other living costs. However, Stefan often tried to get me to pay for various items during our shopping trips, including unnecessary ingredients, alcohol, clothes, and accessories. When I resisted, he would act like a child denied a toy, calling me stingy. Despite these financial disagreements, I found comfort in the fact that, apart from these issues, Stefan didn't interfere much with my everyday life. This sense of comfort changed when we started living together, as Stefan's mother began to disrupt my routine. Unlike Stefan, she relentlessly interrupted my work at home, insisting I prioritize household chores. She would barge into my room, pulling on my clothes, making it impossible for me to focus on my work. Frustrated, I discussed the matter with Stefan, anticipating him to take his mother's side. Surprisingly, Stefan listened and promised to talk to his mother. I hoped for a compromise that would consider both our needs. Little did I know that Stefan's idea of a compromise would involve banishing me to the annex, a new, private room. I approached Stefan with a question about the hut, jokingly asking if I could even demolish it and build a new house. To my surprise, he casually replied, "You can even demolish it and build a new house if you want." Taking his words seriously, I promptly began remodeling the hut according to my taste. Engaged in cleaning, renovating, and changing wallpapers, I noticed that Stefan never once showed his face. Despite being married, it became apparent that Stefan had no intention of living in the remodeled hut with me. As I transformed the space, it dawned on me that within the family living trio, I was the only outsider. There were instances when I found myself alone at home, either when they went out to a barbecue restaurant or when I had to work overtime and missed out on shared meals. While these spirited plans were usually concocted by Stefan's mother, it seemed clear that she might have been the driving force behind my exclusion, perhaps hoping I would quickly leave her son. Despite this, Stefan had given me the freedom to do anything with the hut, and I took full advantage of it, engaging in DIY projects, installing new shelves, and personalizing the space. I made it my own. Interestingly, neither Stefan nor his parents ever visited the hut after I moved out. Although they must have been aware of my renovations, it seemed like I was no longer considered a part of their family, and they had no interest in my activities. Living away from the main house, especially without Stefan's mother around, I began to relish the independence, almost like living alone. I found solace in the fact that staying in the hut prevented her from interfering with my work. Installing new locks and enhancing security during the renovation, I ensured that no one, not even Stefan or his parents, could enter without my knowledge. It led me to reconsider if this new separation wasn't such a bad arrangement after all. However, it seemed my mother-in-law had anticipated my feelings. Unable to tolerate the treatment any longer, I found myself at a crossroads, contemplating my next move. As I settled into the renovated cabin, my mother-in-law's desperation to drive me out became palpable. Her petty harassment started with leaving trash in front of my cabin on garbage day instead of at the collection site. Sometimes, she would host barbecues in the garden without extending an invitation, intentionally wafting the smell of grilled meat towards my cabin. Despite her mild attempts, I couldn't help but smile at her futile efforts to push me away. Then, one day, she summoned me to the main house under the pretense of leftover meat and potatoes. Sensing there was more to it, I went along. Upon arrival, only she was present, and she placed a single piece of paper on the living room table, a divorce paper. It was clear that the real reason she called me was to present this document. If his mother instructed Stefan to submit it, he would do so without hesitation. All that remained was for me to agree, and Stefan and I could be divorced simply by submitting the paper to the city court. With a proud expression, his mother asserted, "Isn't it about time you gave up? There's no reason for you and Stefan to stay married anymore. Get out, you freeloading, unemployed woman." I was taken aback by her audacity, but her certainty in her plan only fueled my determination. Thrilled by the prospect of freedom, I eagerly asked to take the divorce paper, stating, "I'm going to the city court right now. Thank you so much. My mother-in-law, who had likely expected me to resist divorce, was left dumbfounded by my unexpected response. Having submitted the divorce paper at the city court, I wasted no time in packing my belongings. Feeling it was necessary to inform Stefan's mother about the divorce, I headed to the main house and informed her that the process had been successful. Regarding the cabin I renovated, I assured her that I would leave it as is, and she was free to demolish it or use it as she pleased. My positive attitude about leaving surprised even my mother-in-law, who, though seeming happy about my departure, wished me luck as I packed. On the day of my departure, Stefan and his father, seemingly realizing that I was truly leaving, expressed concern, asking, "Are you really going? What will we do without Rachel?" I smiled and thanked them for letting me use the cabin. I explained that since there was no point in being married anymore, and we were now divorced, it was time for me to move on. As I organized my belongings, I completed my move to a luxury apartment, a change I had been arranging for. Not long after settling into my new apartment, my mother-in-law called me awkwardly, saying, "Rachel, I need to ask you something." Cheerfully, I responded, "What's up? How's the cabin I'm using right now?" She then inquired about money, mentioning that Stefan had told her I was giving his father $33,000 a month. Confirming that it was true, I explained that despite her earlier accusation of being an unemployed freeloader, I was indeed working. She seemed surprised, thinking I had quit my job. I clarified that I hadn't quit but left the company to become the president of a new company, setting up a remote work system. Her reaction was one of disbelief, and I sighed, realizing that even Stefan was unaware of my promotion. Considering his attitude since we started living together, it seemed he never truly thought of himself as a husband. When asked about my earnings, including my side job, I nonchalantly mentioned it was roughly around $2 million. I may have exaggerated a bit with the $2 million figure. It's just a hassle to explain the exact figures. With that much money, could you lend us some? Actually, Father was laid off, and he kept it hidden. We've been managing somehow with the $3,000 you've been giving us. Neither Stefan nor I knew about it. It all made sense to me now. My father-in-law's words about it being pitiful to ask his son for money were just a pretense to get me to pay. He probably assumed I had money due to my superior position at our former company, and as a result, sweetly scammed me out of $3,000 a month under the guise of living expenses. In the end, I didn't mind too much since it allowed me to live peacefully in that quiet cabin. "Well, I'm divorced from Stefan now, so I don't have any connection with your family, right?" When I asserted this, my mother-in-law pleaded, "That's not true. To me and to Stefan, you're still family. Come back to us." I immediately declined, recognizing the potential for being used again. Stepping back into a relationship with Stefan would bring me no benefits. We were now complete strangers, and I found it uncomfortable for them to keep calling me family. Besides, they were the ones who drove me out in the first place. I'm really enjoying my life alone now. It's pretty much the same as when I was married, mostly living alone. The difference is, back then, I didn't spend money on myself, and $3,000 was taken from me every month. I prefer my current life much better. Goodbye, then. I ended the call without hesitation, not understanding why they thought I would return. For my mother-in-law, it must have been a last-ditch effort. In fact, Stefan's salary wasn't that great, and he had a habit of saying, "I can't do it," and passing work to others. This trait, displayed in both our personal life and at the office, left him deemed unreliable, and he remained a regular employee without any salary increase. On top of that, with his father laid off and his mother being a housewife, they couldn't maintain their large house and ended up selling it. Now the three of them are living in the cabin I renovated. While it's just right for one person, it must be quite uncomfortable for three people in that cramped space. Since then, I haven't thought about them and continue to live peacefully.